Ecclesiastes, one of my favorite books in the Bible. And why is that? Two reasons. Number one, philosophy. For two, it's not afraid to actually deal with the sense of meaninglessness that our existence can often bring. Has anyone here ever read Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre? Hey, one person. Excellent. Two. All right. If you haven't, it's okay. You're not really missing all that much. But it's that sense of, wait a minute, what is the purpose? What is the meaning of my life? Why am I even doing all the things that I do? Sounds like our teacher today. Vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. Nothing means anything. All the work I do, I don't get to have. Everything I labor for, someone else will receive. All the wisdom that I have gleaned in my life, they're not going to care about. So why should I even do it? Well, as a philosopher that I'm very fond of once said, Socrates called and said, no. If you call yourself a wise person, you should probably get yourself checked on that, because that means you're not actually being wise. But anyhow, it's an interesting thing to think about. Especially, if you have been working hard all your life to build something. Excuse me. Consider the shop owners in TV shows and things like that are like, I want to pass on my store to my son, just like my father passed it on to me and his father before him. And why can this young idiot not understand how important it is to follow this line? Why do you care about going off to college or doing all this sort of stuff when you stay here at home and take up what I've worked so hard for to give you? And if you were ignoring all the wisdom that I brought you. Or the person who is a store owner that doesn't quite appreciate that his family gave him lots of things. Or the things that we take for granted because we aren't aware of the wisdom that was given to us beforehand. So, first of all, it's understandable to be frustrated that you don't get to take anything with you when you die. And all the hard work you've worked for, if you're working towards being able to glean things, to have lots of things for yourself, it's going to be very disappointing. Those of you who are retired can probably attest to the fact that it's a very different experience once you stop working, and it tends to lend itself to a different kind of reflection. I'm curious to see what comes of that when I get to that point. But the perspective in this is that whatever work we do is supposed to be for us, and whatever we glean. But we have to give that on to the next generations. Well, I wonder if maybe looking at it that way is a way, but maybe not the ultimate way of looking at what we are striving for when we work. Who here has managed to do all their work in their lives without any help from anyone else, without any sort of support, without being hired, without being paid? You just managed to do it in a vacuum. Nobody.
So no one ever.
But if our mythology tells us that that's how we do things, it's very easy to lose sight of that interdependence. So, what we're working for isn't necessarily just for us. Now, I have worked hard to get the degrees I've gotten, to get to the point where I was hired by this parish. But I needed to lean on the wisdom of those who came before me. Now, there are some who went before me that might say that I have not paid as much attention to their wisdom because I'm going in a different direction than they might want me to. But what's important about that as well is thinking about, do we actually have the best perspective at all times in all places in either side of that flip coin? After all, there are plenty who would consider me a heretic and not a real Christian because of the things that I value. That's okay. They have the right to that viewpoint. It's interesting to see where, in order to have the things that we have, we depend on those who went before us. And to be able to make the decisions to switch directions depends on the wisdom and the labor of those before us. And just as we inherit that labor from others, we will pass that on to others in the future. Has anyone ever had their parents or their mentors think that you were making a really bad decision with the direction you're taking with your life? I kind of feel like that's the province of intergenerational life. The whole, like, Jeff, are you sure you want to study philosophy? Or, are you sure you want to move all the way out to California? It gets real weird out there, man. And the genius of it all is being taught how to think for myself gave me that. But on a broader spectrum in the world around us, we're often taught that our work is our own, it's our hard-earned money, it's ours to do with what we like. Well and good. And whatever toil, whatever struggles we make, whatever wisdom we bring into the mix is connected to everyone else around us, whether someone we know or a total stranger. So if we think about all of our labors, all of our respective labors in particular, as working towards the building of a world, rather than simply for taking care of my own needs, my own responsibilities, and my own pleasure and my own comfort, does that change the perspective of how we value what we've worked for in our lives? It makes us think, even if I don't see all the benefits of my work, the work is part of the process, which can be a cold comfort. It's like Martin Luther King's last speech before he died, saying that I may not see the promised land, into the promised land, but I can see it from the mountaintop. Or Abraham and Moses, neither of whom saw the fulfillment of God's promises and God's covenants. Yet those promises were fulfilled. Abraham became the father of many nations. The people wandered from the wilderness into the land of promise. Unfortunately, Moses did not get to see that. So was Moses' labor in vain? Should he have just given up? No. Even though he got a lot of kvetching and whining and complaining and uprising, he did what he was meant to do. And if it weren't for the work that he did, we would not have the stories that we have today. So, contrary to our teacher, who comes across to me like a sophomore in college who is taking a class in existentialism, I'll write a passage, but there's that point where your cynicism gets so big that you become cynical of your own cynicism, and then you begin to realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm not as wise as I think. I feel like the king got stuck in a process of philosophy, to where had he stepped further beyond the despair, the comfort in giving up, he would have found a much more meaningful process and meaningful experience of what he had accomplished in his life and what others were accomplishing in their lives, and passing on to others to let them do what they will. I can relate to the frustration of seeing something that you birth that you really want to see go somewhere and it fall flat, or when you leave, people just let it fall flat because they don't care. But recognizing that it's not about me, it's not about my ego in that situation. As a mentor of mine once said, whatever you build, it should be something that you should intend to outlast your time here. So that whatever you do isn't just your own pet project, but it's something that actually gives back and actually contributes and supports the community itself. Easier said than done when you're a rather distinctive priest, but I digress. But if everything we should do should outlast us, our perspective on our lives, why we live them, how we live them, what we do, isn't just about ourselves. It's about how we participate in the co-creation of God's kingdom on earth. And if everything we do is in the service of taking care of ourselves and others, we will work in a different way than one who works solely for one's own gain. And we will be a very strong and powerful witness to the world of the difference between survival, and beloved community. So as you go to work or as you go to the activities in retirement, which are often more busy at times than when you were working, remember that everything you do is part of what you contribute to the beloved community of God. And then anytime you get frustrated, feeling like what you're doing is falling flat, remember that you're contributing to the family of God. And anytime you get frustrated with the fact that people want to tell you how to live your life in a way that doesn't match up with who you are, remember that sometimes that pushback is also building the beloved community of God. That ultimately, everything we do, seen through that lens, informs us of a way to build God's kingdom. And love will abound. Love will grow. So will we. And the world will be transformed as a result. Vanity? No. Part of the whole? Yes. Amen.